welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfas. All right, guys, we are back. The Everyday Millionaire Show. We have Brad Chandler. How you doing, Brad?
I'm awesome, thanks.
Awesome. Nick, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
All right. So, Brad, tell us a little bit about your background and where you started. Maybe even go back to, college days, high school days, where it started there, and then kind of work us through just a snippet by snippet of kind of where you are now.
Yeah. So in ninth grade, I read a book on how to buy real estate with no money down. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of money to be made in real estate. This is what I'm going to do. And since then, I just always knew I was going to do real estate. So I went to Virginia Tech, got a degree in residential property management with a concentration in real estate. Came out, worked for a developer, and then went back to graduate school. I was like, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. I'm not a corporate guy. I want to be an entrepreneur. So I was like, maybe I need an MBA in real estate. So I got that, worked for a developer. And then an investor bought my neighbor's house in late 2002 in Vienna, Virginia. And I went and talked to him, and he said, yeah, I buy houses at 30% below market. So I was like, fix them up and sell them. I'm going to do that. And so that was in December of 2002. My son had just been born in July. I was working a full-time job. And I would come home, I would spend 6 to 8 p.m. with him, put him to bed at 8, and then work from 8 to 11 every night. I'd be pounding We Buy Houses signs when the DC sniper was out. I was hand addressing hundreds of envelopes. I was leaving door hangers. I had no money. I had like a negative $80,000 net worth at the time from graduate school. And it took me 8 long months to find my first deal. But I kept getting more and more persistent. I bought my first house in July of 2003. I bought 6 houses in July and August of 2003. I went to my boss in October of 2003 and said I quit. Came home, told my wife at the time, and said, I just quit, and I'm starting Express Home Buyers. She's like, are you crazy? We have a newborn son, and I have 2 kids. I was like, it'll be fine. And here we are 20 years later. We're not still together, but everything was fine. We've flipped over 4,000 houses.
That's crazy because a lot of people, they don't know when they can leave their job, and for you to do it within 6 months, it sounds like, and to buy 6 houses and then quit in about 6 months is pretty bold move.
I had $60,000 saved up, so for some reason I felt comfortable with $60,000, even though I owed $80,000 in student loans.
It's also interesting too because I feel like there's not a ton of people that, I mean, there are some, but all the people that we know got into real estate because of something else that they were doing. You studied real estate from the get and then, got into it. A lot of people didn't even, that we talked to, don't even know about real estate investing. Like if you tell them that you're a full-time real estate investor, they're like, is that a real job? Because they don't know about that, and schools failed to teach us about that. So you were really young when you found that book that kind of changed the way you thought. That's like the rich dad, poor dad moment when I think a lot of people like us read that and we're like, oh, this is a real thing that people can actually do and make money. And that's their job. So that's also really cool that you found it that young.
Did you have any friends or family members in real estate before you got started?
No, not really. Nope.
So just stumbled on a book and that's it.
Yep.
That's really cool. So when you first started your first business, what were some of the biggest struggles that you had getting started? You said, it took you 8 months to find a deal. After that, did you come up with a system to better find deals? Did you have a mindset shift, or did you have a breakthrough of some sort?
Well, my first business got shut down by my middle school principal at 7th grade. I was selling blow pops. I'd go to the local pharmacy and buy a big bag and rip out the coupon and buy another bag. And I think I was buying them for like 4 or 5 cents, and I was selling them for, I forget, 25 or 50 cents and a piece. And it was just a blow pop, right, with a lollipop with gum in the middle. And I can remember having $80 in change, and I was thinking, man, I am freaking rich. And then they shut me down. So that was my first business. But back to the real estate. It took me 8 long months to find my first, because I didn't really know what I was doing. And then when I had the money to invest, my father gave me the idea to do TV advertising because he was an attorney. And back in 1981, he went to his 2 partners and he goes, we need to start TV advertising. And they're like, no, we can't do that. That's unethical in the law business, in the legal profession. He's like, well, screw you, I'm leaving. And he found two guys that were like on board, and so he formed this law firm, and that's what he did for most of his life, using TV. So very early on, I'm like, we got to do TV, we got to do TV. And I was looking for a partner, and I found a partner who I'm still partners with today. It's been fantastic. He actually owns a house a few miles from here, like I said, in Sherwood Forest. So we just started marketing. I say we're really a marketing and sales company. It's not really a real estate company. We're a marketing sales company, and we're solving people's problems, which just happen to be real estate. So we spend well into the six figures a month in marketing.
Nice. What did your strategy look like from when you first started to the 8-month mark when you found your first deal?
The strategy was just get a freaking deal. I mean, anything and everything I could to get the phone ringing for a motivated seller.
But can you go into more details, like what
What I was doing.
specifically you were doing?
Yeah, so I was putting out hundreds of "We Buy Houses" signs on telephone poles and bandit signs. I was hand addressing. Literally, I can remember hand addressing hundreds of envelopes at the kitchen table. I was putting door hangers out. I was on the listserv. So back then they had listservs, and there was one or two, or either the first or second deal I ever got was a lady that posted, a realtor that posted. She had a client. I went out in March to make an offer, and she didn't accept it, but I kept in touch with her agent. Her agent called me back in July and said, she is 6 days away from foreclosure. Since you're a foreclosure expert, we wanted to sell you the house. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'm thinking, foreclosure expert, where'd you get that from? And I went and bought the house subject to, which means we bought the house with the existing financing in place. I gave her like $5,000, ended up offering her, I think, $20,000 less, because between March and July, I learned a little bit. And I was like, had I bought it at the original price, I would have lost money. So that's how I found I think it was my second deal, through a listserv.
Wow.
And subject to is a complicated transaction too. So for your second deal, finding a title company that's willing to work with that, and just understanding how that's impressive to just understand how a subject to deal even works.
So the guy that I mentioned that bought the investor who bought my neighbor's house, I kept in touch with him, and I called him. And I said, John, his name is John Peterson. He's well known in the DC market and education. I said, John, I've got this deal. What do I do? And he goes, oh, no problem. Just put it into a land trust and buy it subject to and do this. And I'm like, what the hell did he just say? He's like, just call this guy Ted Hassar, this settlement attorney. He'll take care of it. And sure enough, I called Ted, and he was a title attorney, and we made it work, and she was happy as can be.
Are you still doing any subject to deals nowadays?
Very infrequently. But we've probably done, over the 4,000 deals we've probably done 75 of them maybe.
It's an interesting strategy now with rates being so high, and just a couple of years ago, people locked in rates in the twos, and now it's like you can find somebody, lock in a good rate now when they're in the sevens and eights.
It's a really good strategy. Just know that the gurus make it sound a lot easier. So go buy 100 houses on subject to financing. It sounds great. Oh, I don't have to put any money into it. And then let the real estate market reset by 20%. So now you're holding debt that's above the actual mortgage, and the economy craps, and now you've got 25 of those people not paying rent. How are you going to pay for those 25 houses? So just like with anything, you just have to be careful and know what you're getting into.
Right. Absolutely. So when so you're 8 months in, you did your first deal. From then to now, what was some of like the breakthroughs that you had in business? Did you start hiring right away? Did you just hammer down into your own systems? What was kind of your next steps there?
So one of the first books I ever read was E-Myth by Michael Gerber, Entrepreneurial Myth, and it's a book about creating systems for your business. Whether you're opening one store or you plan to open a bunch, you should always start a business like you're going to do it 5,000 times, so you can get the systems and the people in place. So I had that concept from right from the get-go. However, I'm not the system process type of guy. I'm a visionary. My partner's a visionary. We didn't figure that out till well into many years into it. So when we started, we were just, each of us was doing everything. Phone would ring, he'd call. I would talk to the seller, he'd talk to the seller. I'd talk to a contractor, he'd talk to a contractor. So very early on, I'm like, hey, let me take the sales and marketing piece, you take the construction and financing piece, and then from there, as we couldn't handle them, we just brought in. So the admin was one of the first people, kind of like the Gary Keller model, bring in the admin, and then we brought in an acquisition associate. and we would just bring in another acquisition. We would just go to the point where, and then we would reinvest our profits into the marketing, and we would just slowly grow and build out systems and people.
So I guess admin would be like a fixed expense versus the acquisition would be commission based.
So we've always paid our acquisition people a base salary, so it's a combination.
Gotcha. So you would have to pay them even if you guys weren't making anything.
Yep.
And fast forward to now, how many employees do you guys have now?
I think we have about 16 in our home office in Springfield, Virginia, and we probably have another 12 or 13 full-time virtual assistants in the Philippines.
Okay. And how do you like the virtual assistant thing? Does it work out well for you? Do you have issues with that? We always get like mixed reviews. I feel like.
I mean, over the grand scheme of things, it's very, very positive. I mean, is it perfect? Nothing in this world is perfect. So, the typhoons hit, they lose internet and stuff. But we've had a core group for like several years, and we pay them between $5 an hour and like $11 an hour. So, obviously, it's way cheaper than going with labor over here.
Right. Yeah. No, for my property management business, I've been thinking about that and just like breaking off tasks like water bill audits and this and that I can send out to them, and they can text the people, and it's definitely a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time person here.
For sure.
When you first started, what was your most effective marketing strategies versus what they are now?
TV and TV.
Same. So it's been the same over the years.
Yeah, when we first started running, I mean, TV ads, literally, we could buy overnight spots for like $12 a spot at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. You can't do that anymore, but so that's why it was effective. We would just start out really cheap, and yeah.
How do you measure how much you're getting off of TV? Is it like a certain number that populates and they call that number?
So it's not perfect because so many people now go to the internet, but we just we ask everybody, and it's never perfect, but a lot of people like, we saw your TV ads.
Mm-hmm.
So with the TV ads, has it gotten lower, like per capita, I guess you would say, since TV is a little less popular? Like as you said, like there's 3 of us here, mid-30s, none of us have TV. So have you seen that decline at all? Or?
We haven't seen much of a decline, and remember, you're not our demographic either. So we're shooting for the 50 to plus category,
true.
and a lot of those folks are still watching TV.
That makes sense.
And are you in the commercials?
I am. I do
Yep.
all the commercials. Yep.
Nice.
And what is that process like? Do you have, like, you go to a studio? Do you have somebody like Marcus that comes here to your house? Or
No, we have a really cool studio. Yeah, we go to a studio, really cool
Nice.
setup with the green screen and everything.
Nice. That's awesome. So in your now business, how do you determine if you're going to flip a deal or you're going to wholesale a deal? Do you have rental properties also, or?
We have a couple, but we don't have many rental properties now.
Okay. Is there any reason you're?
So we sold like 80 of them back in 2015. We this hasn't always been roses. We've gone through some tough times. We've made, I think I made 5 business mistakes over the 17 years between 2004 and 2018 that cost us $9 million. So we had to sell some of those rentals or all of the rentals to pay for the
Can we dig deeper into some of those mistakes?
Yeah, sure.
And why you think you made them at the time?
Yeah. Before we go into that, though, I want to tell you something, because remember I said my partner was the financial guy, and he was looking at the returns from the rentals, and it's hard to make great returns from rentals until they're paid off because of the turnover. So he was looking at the yields that we were making at like 3 or 4%. He's like, Brad, we've got all these millions of dollars tied up in these rentals, and we're paying an effective 12, 13, 14% cost of capital to flip these houses. So if we just sold these and deployed this money, and finally he convinced me because we were like running low on cash to pay for something. But yeah, the mistakes. So in 2005, the first 5 or 6 months of 2005, on paper, we had netted like $1.5 million in the fix and flip business. So I'm the smartest guy in the world. There's nothing I can't do. Like, all these other guys are dumb. Like, they just don't get it. They're just not as smart as me. So let's start doing some development deals. So we did 3 development deals. One was a house in North Arlington that we lost $930,000 on. Then we bought a place near the XM Sirius headquarters in DC, and we're like, we'll put another level on. Didn't check with zoning before, and so we went through zoning. They're like, no, you can't do that. And then we bought like a 6-unit apartment in Adams Morgan that we were going to convert to condos. And on paper, the numbers were probably good, but we got the wrong contractor and architect. We got this architect that like brought the construction people, and it was just a disaster. So those 3 deals alone cost us $3 million, and some of them, I think the last one took us like 10 years to extricate ourselves from.
Wow. Okay. So it wasn't always so great.
No, just like most businesses, we had our ups and downs, but overall, I've been grateful, and it's served me incredibly well. It's given me the lifestyle to, always be. I've been a single dad for 12 years, so I've never missed anything to do with my kids, and I'm at every event, sporting event, and doctor's appointment, and everything. So it's been an amazing run.
Nice. What would you say your job is now, as where you are in your company?
It's like so I still have the official title of a CEO, but what am I? I'm like almost like the chief strategist, kind of chief strategist and coach. Like I coach, folks at work now on being happier and getting rid of some of this childhood programming that controls so many of our lives unknowingly.
Cool. So why don't we get into that a little bit? So you have now a coaching business. Is it life coaching? Is that the right term?
I mean, I consider myself a happiness coach. I help people find more happiness in their lives and business.
And you talked about it a little bit before the show. Can you, kind of tell us how you got into that and what made that mindset shift for
Yeah.
you?
So 2.5 years ago, I was trying to get my son help for anxiety, and I was on the phone with a Zoom call with a performance coach, and she said, you have a tic. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you blink profusely when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unresolved childhood trauma that's affecting your son in your life. Do you want to come out and work with myself and my husband? And I said, sure, I'll do anything for my son. And in one weekend, really in a 3-hour session in a bedroom in an Airbnb, my life completely changed. I'm a completely different human being than I was 2.5 years ago. And I came home just so much happier and feeling so much freer. And I kind of looked around. I was like, oh my gosh, like I just had this profound change. And I thought about everyone that I know and all the struggles that they had. And I was like, this is what's keeping them back. This is why they're depressed. This is why they drink so much, overeat, why they have a shitty marriage, why their business is just like in chaos. It all has to do with what I went through. And I was like, I've got to give this gift back to other people. And so now for 2.5 years, I've been studying. I've studied under some of the best in the world. I've read 50 books. I've taken thousands of hours of courses. And I've helped over 100 people like radically transform their lives, and it's just been amazing.
Can you touch on maybe the first couple steps on how that transformation, how that plays out, and how it helps the people who
Yeah.
join the program?
And kind of like what happened in that session. Was it a talk session? Was it like, is that like when you went to there?
Yeah. So what we did is I got into a deeply relaxed state, and then he asked me situations in my childhood or my past where I felt I had no control, or I was in some type of traumatic event, or I was in a stressful situation. And what were the meanings and stories that I told myself around those things? So I like to call it childhood programming now, because if someone hears the word trauma, a lot of people check out, well, I didn't have trauma. But trauma can be big T trauma, where you're sexually assaulted or locked in a cage or something, or beaten. And then you have little T trauma, where your sister could have come home from the hospital from being born, and you've thought that your parents loved her more than you, and therefore you've become a meth addict in your 20s. Like little things like that can affect. So I don't use the word trauma so much anymore. It's really childhood programming. We're all born, whether you believe in God, we all come from one creator, the universe, or whoever it is, whatever you believe. And we're born this perfect child, right? And through our imperfect parents or caregivers, they make us feel a certain way. And those feelings are buried deep in our subconscious mind. So when you're 6 years old and something bad happens to you, your dad hits you with a belt, as in my case, I had to explain, my little brain had to explain that. And I didn't have logic. I had to have emotion. So it's like, why is this happening to me? I must be bad. And it helped me get through those periods. But at 47 years old, when my subconscious mind is saying, you're still bad, I had to prove myself. So why did I lose $9 million in those 5 mistakes? Most of those were driven from my need or my ego to make more money, because I thought by making more money, it would bring me happiness and worth, and it didn't. And so that is the crux of most people's problem, every single person who's listening to this that has a problem, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. It's a thinking problem. And that thinking problem was developed as your brain was maturing and growing when you went through a tough situation. Your brain did its job, but it's not serving you now. And that subconscious brain or mind where it's buried controls 95% of your daily behavior. So people come home and they drink 3 glasses of wine, they fight with their wife, they eat too much, they gamble, they're depressed. They're like, why do I feel this way? Why am I doing it? And after dealing with 100 clients, it always comes back to something that happened, that story that they're holding on to and they don't even know they're holding on to, and they don't even know it's controlling them.
So do you really believe though that every person is born perfect and it's only the environment that they're in that causes them to act certain ways? Like the thing that comes to me is like so I'm from Long Island, and I don't know if you've heard, but there's a serial killer that just got caught, the Gilgo Beach killer. And my wife and I just went into this long rabbit hole of serial killers, right? And what drove them, and some of them had normal lives, this and that, and they have a, like, in my head something's like miswired, right? That's what I think. Do you think that that's not true? Do you think it's only environment that makes people like either ultimately good or maybe ultimately really bad?
So, of course, nothing in life is completely black and white. Are there people that were born with genetic issues? Yes, but do you know how small of a percent? Do you know how many genetic issues there really are? People want to say like alcoholism and depression runs in families. It really doesn't. What runs in families is the trauma that is associated with the depressed person or the alcoholic person. So it's interesting that you said that, because I've thought in the last couple of years of going like to prisons and interviewing these folks. But if you look at some of the most notorious, what do you call them? Serial killers. Look at Ted Bundy. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer. They had terrible childhoods. They were completely, completely neglected. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer was like completely isolated. So yes, I believe, someone once said to me that, or I heard them say that Jesus and Hitler were born the same person. One just used love and one just used fear. So yeah, I think it's, in 99.9% of the time, if you look at why are our prisons full, why are hospitals full, why is the war in Ukraine going on, why is there child sex trafficking? Every problem in this world can come down to an individual's lack of self-love and self-compassion. Because if you love yourself, you're not hurting another human being. And why do we lack self-love and self-compassion? Because when we're born, we have it. It's through that childhood programming that we lose it. It's still inside of us, but it's covered up deeply.
So the way that, we have obviously in this country a massive mental health problem. In your head, what is one of the solutions to get the people out of prisons that don't really belong there, or because it's a mental health issue? And where's like, what is the step forward as a society, in your opinion? Obviously, I know, you don't have a crystal ball or anything like that, but.
No, I mean, look, every single problem, I'm repeating myself, but every single problem comes down to this thinking. So they did a study one time where they were trying to find a gene for aggressive people, and they found it the study was broken up into 3 cohorts. The most aggressive, they're like, oh, we found it. And then they're like, well, shit, we found it in the non-aggressive too. And that gene was sensitivity. So you've got prisons full of sensitive men. You see these big burly men tattooed up and they look all tough and stuff. But someone who's sensitive takes on trauma worse than someone who does. That is a gene you're born with. You're either sensitive or you're not. So that tells you right there that our prisons are full because of these guys. They weren't born with these issues. They were learned. So how do we fix all this? We go to the parents. It all starts with the parents. So when I get clients coming to me and they say, hey, we have a child that needs help, I tell them, listen, the child needs help because of you. Like, if you really want to help your child, if your child has behavioral problems, if they have defiant disorder, if they have ADD, if they have ADHD, if they have depression, anxiety, none of those kids were born with that. It's all the responsibility of the parents and caregivers. So how do we fix this? We go to the parents and we start by figuring out why do they lack self-love? What happened in their childhood that's still programming them from a subconscious that they don't even know about. And then we just turn that story around. It's what I did, and it's what I do with clients every day. You reprogram through something called neuroplasticity. It's just a fancy way of saying your brain's natural ability to regrow neural pathways. Doctors love in the Western world to diagnose you, label you, and then give you a drug. But those drugs, if you look at Paxil, which is the most prescribed antidepressant, I think in the last 100 years, its effectiveness is the same as a placebo. 33% of Americans are on an anti-anxiety or antidepressant drug, but you look at hospitalizations, they're going up. So what does that tell you? Do the drugs work? No, the drugs don't work. You've got to get to the source, whether it's a mental problem or a physical problem, pain. The only way you solve a mental or physical pain is to go to the source. We don't typically go to the source. We give drugs to mask the symptoms. We go to therapists that want to talk about what are the symptoms and what's going on the conscious level, but that's not what's driving the behavior. So the fix is to go back to the source and heal the pain.
So the one kind of just rebuttal to that is I was a teacher for 10 years, and I taught at a school specifically for students with dyslexia, ADHD, and minor global deficiencies, basically. And there's definitely some sort of link between those deficiencies, whether it's dyslexia and all that stuff, and behavior of those kids. One example that I'll give you is some of the students that I taught, they would be in a public school situation where I was in private school, in a special school for these kids. When they were in the public school, they felt as if they weren't smart enough to keep up in class, right? So they started acting out. They started being behavioral issues. They come to the school that I was teaching at, smaller classroom, teachers that are trained in this kind of thing, and they then graduate high school and go on to college, and they figure it all out. Are you saying that connection between certain mental deficiencies and behavior is not true?
So, first of all, kids only misbehave because they lack connection. So, what you just said, one, they could lack connection with their parents. Two, they could lack connection in a huge school. So, if they were brought into an environment where you were able to connect with them, that may solve the problem right there. Your second question, can you read? I didn't quite understand what your question was.
So it's basically like, do you think that there could be a connection between somebody that's, let's say, dyslexic, right? So what you said kind of answered both sides of it. It's the environment that they were in a big school setting where they couldn't have a one-on-one time with the teacher as much as you could in a private school setting. That lack of connection or feeling as if they didn't understand was the cause of their misbehavior.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't speak to dyslexia. I can speak to ADHD. And there are some dietary things that cause ADHD, but a vast majority is the environment. You're in an environment that's really painful and stressful and traumatic. What do? Your brain does its job. It disassociates. It disconnects. And so ADHD is just a disconnection. Like you can't process stuff in your frontal lobe quick enough. You're actually processing it too quickly, but it's almost always from environment.
Okay, yeah, and I do believe I did a big study my senior year in college about the tie between diet and ADHD, ADD, the red dye, and a
Yep.
lot of stuff that my parents' generation, I'm sure your parents, just fed us not
Not
knowing
knowing.
at all what they were feeding us, and I truly believe that. And I did actually like a little seminar thing because I did teach PE and health. I did a seminar thing to parents at that school. I don't want to say the name of the school, but it was specifically for ADHD, dyslexia, ADD, and then we had, like, I would say Asperger's spectrum, but nothing, no nonverbal students or anything like that. And it was an amazing place to see these kids that were really failing at the public school setting come in and succeed and really learn the same way as the kids or learn the same content, as I should say, as the students in public school, just in a different environment.
That's awesome.
So I do believe that, and the food, don't get me started, is like that's one of the big things that we do need to change. But So to go back on like the global or I guess countrywide that we'll talk about mental health crisis, I will say drug use is at an all time high. People are dying from overdoses, blah blah blah, the whole nine. What is one small step that people can take? You can't coach everybody, right? If I said everybody's going to Brad and you'll solve all the world's issues, but what's like one step in your opinion that people could take um, to kind of move forward and get ahead of that issue?
Yeah, I'm going to give two answers, two quick answers, real simple. All change begins with awareness. So if I was listening to this podcast 4 years ago and I heard the term self-love, I would have said, guys, I love myself. I have high self-esteem and I don't care what others think. All of those were lies and I didn't even realize them. So I developed this self-love quiz. It's 12 questions. It takes you 2.5 minutes to take, which is going to show you your level of self-love, AKA self-esteem. So if you show up with, if you score lack of self-love or mild self-love, I guarantee you that some or all of your areas of your life are negatively affected. If you have kids, I promise you that you're negatively affecting them. If you score extreme self-love, I bet your life is hitting on all cylinders. So a lot of times I'll take people and in 5 weeks, I'll take them from lack of self-love to extreme self-love by doing these activities. Secondly, I started a podcast called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs where we talk about this stuff and I bring in other therapists and all types of people who are dealing with this type of issues, and we run through all of this content and what you can do. But from a standpoint of what someone can do is they can lay in the bed, they can get in a deeply relaxed state, and they can start thinking about really deep diving, do a meditation and deep dive into what were some of the things in your childhood that were really stressful for you, and think about the things that you talked about or you thought about that situation. If you thought about them at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, you've internalized them. They're in your subconscious mind. They're likely affecting you today. So all change begins with awareness. So just become aware if you have an issue.
So, for those listening, where can they find the quiz and your podcast?
So bradchandler.com is my website, and there's a button for the quiz and there's a button for the podcast, but it's bradchandler.com/quiz and bradchandler.com/podcast.
And we'll share that in the YouTube link and Spotify and all that stuff too. So with your podcast, let's go a little bit deeper into that. So it's you and a guest, and are you focused on entrepreneurs specifically, or just anybody that fits that kind of criteria that they were dealing with some sort of trauma or childhood programming, and now they're working with you? Like, what's your format there?
So I've attracted a bunch of entrepreneurs thus far because that's my network. That's everyone I know, right? Could someone who's not an entrepreneur listen to How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs and take away and have a massive life change? Absolutely. So while it's geared towards entrepreneurs, anyone can listen to it and have massive change. I was actually in the gym the other day, and actually about a month ago, and someone confided in me that they were having a lot of struggles in their marriage. They moved out of the house. They weren't being there was a girlfriend involved, and I had a conversation with him. I was like, listen to my podcast, and I didn't see him for about a month because I don't go to that gym much. And I saw him yesterday, the day before, and I go, how are things going? He goes, man, I listened to 10 episodes and like things are literally starting to change. And I'm like, yes.
So do you think there's a connection between entrepreneurs specifically and some of those issues? Because I feel like, as a serial entrepreneur myself, like just constantly trying to come up with new business ideas, this and that. Do you think there's some sort of, connection with what you were saying before? Like we have like a need to do that next best thing and like come up with like you can have $1 million and you're not happy. You can have $1 billion and you're still not happy. You're just not that you're not. I don't want to say not happy because I do feel generally happy, but constantly wanting more. Where there's like a large percentage of people that have a regular job and they're arguably just as happy. They have less things or whatever, a smaller house than the entrepreneur maybe. Do you think there's some sort of connection there?
I do. I think entrepreneurs primarily start businesses for a few main reasons. One of them is to make a bunch of money, to feel worthy, to feel enough. And if you take that quiz and you score lack of self-love or mild self-love, to some degree, you don't feel you're enough. So whether you make $100,000 a year, $1 million a year, $10 million a year, if you score lack of self-love, you're never going to feel it's enough. Look at the Whitney Houstons, the Michael Jackson, the princes of the world who've taken their lives, and that it's proof that money won't buy you happiness. The second reason is that entrepreneurs start businesses because they have this perceived notion that they're going to have control. And really, we don't control anything in this world. The only thing you control is your thoughts, really. And why would someone want control? Because as a child, they lacked control. So, yeah, I think there's some correlation between entrepreneurism and some of these issues that we're talking about.
Yeah. So, do you or have you listened to Andrew Tate?
I haven't listened to much. My son talks a lot about him.
So, a lot of the stuff that he says that he comes, it's polarizing, and I'm sure a lot of it's for views and clicks and stuff like that. But he basically was like, I don't believe in depression. And in his he had an interview with Tucker Carlson, and his explanation of that um, was basically like, depression only exists if you let it exist in your life. Do you think that there's any merit to that? Because what you're saying almost sounds like a really, really nice version and PG version of what he says in a less polarizing way.
Yeah, so depression is what it's from what you tell yourself. It's the image that you have, it's the pictures, and it's the words that you put into your head, right? And why would you put those terrible words or terrible images into your head? It's because of that flawed thinking. So yes, I do agree. I believe that depression. I worked with a lady who was literally days away, hours away from checking herself, hospitalizing herself for depression, clinical depression. Had I not taken her on a Saturday, and I usually don't take clients on a Saturday, but it was someone that I knew, and we did the exact same exercises I'm talking about. We went back to her childhood. We found these terrible times that she went through and the stories she told herself, and months later, she's a completely different person. So so if you're listening and you've got anxiety, depression, OCD, you drink too much, you smoke too much, you're overweight, you got a shitty marriage, and you're like, I've tried everything. You haven't tried everything, most likely, and there is a better way. Like drugs typically don't solve it, they just mask it. And so, yeah, there's a better way, and it doesn't take 20 years. I mean, my life changed in 3 hours, and my clients typically see profound changes in the third session of working with me.
What does OCD come from, in your opinion?
Going back to control, great question. It goes back to when you're a child and you have no control over the situation, your body. I mean, the human brain is so freaking amazing. Like, we know so little about the human brain. I know we're learning a lot more, but it's so powerful. It's so amazing. We develop coping mechanisms. And coping mechanisms can be picking your finger, can be picking your heel, can be smoking, can be washing, can be, overwashing, keeping the house, because it's a perceived control. So one of my first clients I worked with had OCD so bad that she picked her heel to the point where she couldn't walk. It was so painful. And after 3 sessions, this was almost a year ago. It's been a year. I talked to her this weekend. She's like, I've never touched it again. It's amazing. My life has completely changed. So it's just our body saying something's painful happening and I can't control it. So I'm going to control something, even if it's at the detriment to myself.
So what's the difference between when you help them and coach them versus like hypnotizing people? Is that kind of like the same thing?
So hypnosis is just a tool in my toolkit, and that's really just like a deep, relaxed state. All of us go into hypnosis at almost every day of our lives. When you're driving to work and you're going on the same route, you're in a state where your subconscious mind's taken over. So why I think hypnosis is like the best tool on the planet, you can do it through psychedelics. You can get to a similar place, but you don't need the drugs. What is so great about hypnosis is it allows you to access your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is what drives 95% of your daily behavior. And when I ask you in a meditative state, which is just a deep relaxation, if I say to you, Nick, let's go to the places in your life that were the cause, the root, and the reason for this, and put in your issue, your OCD, your depression, you're drinking too much. Your brain is going to go, whether you're 6 months old, 8 years old, it's going to go and it's going to say, wow, that one time my dad didn't show up, or the one time that my dad hit me, or the one time my dad made fun, or I had to do a school and I peed in my pants and all the kids laughed at me. Your subconscious mind knows, it's just hidden. So we in hypnosis, we get that out, and it's just a really powerful tool.
Awesome.
That's interesting. So Can we talk about some of your goals for your coaching business and then some for your active, your real estate business as well?
Yeah, sure. So, coaching business, I turned 50 in May, and I'm manifesting that I'm going to live to be at least 110. I'm a health and longevity nut. So, I want to help 1 million people. And if you're listening and you want to be a part of helping me, I need a lot of people. So, reach out to me if you have any interest in helping me. So I want to continue to help people. I want to continue to use my gifts that God has given me to show people that, look, you can change. You can change in a profound and fast way. It doesn't take years and years. Whatever it is, whatever issue you're suffering with, it comes down to a thinking problem. And I have developed over these last 2.5 years a proven model for fixing it. So that's my coaching business. The real estate business is doing very well now. We've got a great group of people. We operate in Baltimore Metro, DC Metro, and Los Angeles. We want to continue to do more business in those areas. We want to continue to grow as a team. I frankly, personally think that there's going to be some tough times in real estate, and there's going to be some great buying opportunities. Things just can't continue to go up and up and up and up forever. And with interest rates, sooner or later, the prices have to start coming down. I don't think we're going to, people, you hear all the time like, oh, let's buy at 7% and we'll just refinance when they go down. Well, people think that's the normal, but the normal interest rate over the last 60 years is closer to 8%, not 3%, what everyone's used to. And Charlie Munger's partner, or who's Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, says that over the last 40 years, real estate or interest rates have been going down, and he feels that we're an inflection point, and that he thinks that for the next 40 years, interest rates could be going up. We could be back in the next 10 years to 18-20% interest rates. You can't sustain house values when you're paying 18% for a mortgage. So I think there's going to be a lot of buying opportunities. We may enter back into the buy and hold model.
Okay. So with the coaching business, 1 million people, do you do any group coaching, or is it just specifically one-on-one?
Right now it's one-on-one, but I had to spend a couple years doing that to just really learn the business and learn. My program, improves every day. So I will very soon go to a group model where we can serve a lot more people.
How many?
1 million is a lot to do one-on-one.
It is.
Yeah, like, impossible.
And for the coaching business, is it just you? I know you said your girlfriend's going to get on board with that as well. So it's just the two of you at the moment?
So we're not even working together at this time. I've got an operations manager, and probably I've got one full-time, now two full-time VAs and a part-time person.
Gotcha.
And do you plan on training other people to do one-on-one sessions like you would do with somebody else, or like that person did to you when you made that change?
I do. So I've been absolutely. I'm gonna eventually have a training program so people can do exactly what I'm doing, because it's been working so well.
What do you think it takes? Does it take a special person to do what you're doing, or just somebody that had like some sort of breakthrough, or do you think you can train anybody to do what you're doing?
So the only people that I want to work with are the people who, a lot of people in this life coaching space and therapy world, they don't walk their talk. 83% of Americans identify as not being very happy. So if you take that and you look at life coaches or therapists, like 83% of them probably fall in that same category. They're not very happy. So I want to find people who are walking the talk, which means they have extreme self-love. They are on a journey. They're in a good relationship, or at least they're not in an abusive relationship. They don't drink. They don't abuse drugs or alcohol. They've got their life in a really good place. Those are the type of people, I think, if they're empathetic and they have a real drive to help people, I think you can train almost anyone to do this type of work.
Do you follow Gary Brecka?
I don't.
Have you heard of him?
No.
No? It's very interesting. It just made me think of him with the health aspect, because he used to work for an insurance agency, and his job was to tell the agency when people would die, and he could get it down to like within months. And it was all going to like their genes and their DNA, and he relates to what you mentioned as far as like it's not genetic, and he's big on that. Like there's nothing that's genetic, and every issue can be worked through just as much as you're saying it can be.
So yeah, and to go with that, like I think one of the big things, as somebody that was teaching PE, I was an athlete, I think one of those things, obesity to me is like a really amazing, eye-opening. I don't want to say amazing because it's not a positive thing, but it's an eye-opening problem that we have, that people will make every excuse in the world why they're overweight, except for tackling that main problem, which is like something that could be rooted, obviously, like you said, in childhood trauma, programming, whatever you want to call it, or just terrible habits that they're not willing to break. And you, as somebody that taught so many kids, to see, you know, a 6 year old that's 200 pounds or 150 pounds, which is like a common thing, they can barely walk. Like, um, that to me is like one of the worst abuses that, you know, we have in this country right now is food. Do you think part of your journey is you know, reteaching that part too, like nutrition and exercise and physical activity and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So I want to fix the individual, and then I want to get into relationships, because if you come to me for work, that means that you lack self-love. So if you lack self-love, you're going to have problems in your intimate relationships and problem with your kids. So I want to get into that realm. There's another realm, a whole new realm of sexuality that I've unearthed in the last 2 years, and then the health and longevity. But I'm glad you brought up the obesity thing, because it really is a problem in the United States. And let me ask you this: when you're 6 years old and something really stressful happens to you, can you jump in the car and drive to your local bar and have a couple beers to blow off some steam? No. But what can you do? What's in every single refrigerator and
Well,
cupboard
you get
in
ice
America?
cream, you get a candy
we
bar.
we have food. So many of these kids have been in these traumatic situations and these stressful home situations. They turn to food to cope. So that is their coping mechanism. So Marissa Peer, who's one of my mentors, she 40 years ago, she started in the weight loss, and she's parlayed that into this huge company nationwide or worldwide now that teaches people. It's called Rapid Transformational Therapy. It's a combination of NLP, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and hypnosis. And she works with a lot of weight loss people. And people, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences, but it's a study. It's a huge study about how trauma impacts, and it's an actual score from 0 to 10. And the reason this came about is there's a doctor in California that had this weight loss clinic, and 50% of these women who were having these incredible results were leaving the program. And he's like, "What the heck's going on?" And he interviewed and he did a deep dive. Most of those women, when they started to lose the weight, they were afraid that someone may come and sexually abuse them. So their mind said, no, 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 we can't go there. So they started eating more to put on the weight to repel the potential attackers.
And what do you say to like the now movement that obesity is okay and people love, like, you know, Lizzo, I love my body. It's, you know, massively unhealthy and massively overweight, but I love my body. Do you think that's a bunch of BS?
I mean, it's just like me. If you, like I said earlier, if you'd asked me, did I love myself 5 years ago? It's just a lie. I had to cope. I knew that. Well, I didn't really know the truth. I mean, she may feel that way, but I think it's just a coping. It's a defense mechanism.
Because we're like, you know, we're putting fat chicks on Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions now. We're like kind of you know, I don't know, this generation is kind of like putting it on a pedestal, saying like it's okay and it's good. Ultimately, that's like a terrible thing to promote. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think people are doing that?
If you want to know the cause of anything in this world, just trace the money. So if money can be made off of it, they're going to do it. So overweight people have to wear bathing suits and clothes and order food and everything the same. So I think it's just a way to make more money. I don't think it's good. No one overweight can say that. I mean, they can say whatever they want, but like you said, it is unhealthy. And if you are using food to cope, there's something wrong with you internally. Not there's something wrong with you. Internally there's a struggle that not probably, if fixed, would transform your life in all areas. If you're overweight, I promise you that that's not your only area of your life that you have issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's you know, something so important to people are like we're watching TV and social media and whatever else, they're trying to, the woke culture is trying to tell you that all these things are okay, and they're really not. But we keep being, the kids especially keep being told that online. You know, the new age youngsters that are on iPhones all day and on iPads and on social media. Do you think that social media is part of that big problem that we have?
Absolutely. Every problem, I mean, the thinking problem really, when you think wrong, you disconnect from yourself. So when we were talking about ADHD and you had to disconnect, all of our problems are just a lack of connection from ourselves. So you mentioned that the obesity is getting worse, the drug addictions are getting worse. Why is that? We're getting further and further disconnected from ourselves and other human beings. You don't ever have to leave this house. You could exercise here. Some people don't exercise. You can get your food here. You can work from home. You've got social media. All the kids now game online. They prefer to game than have like friends come over. When I was a kid, like I had sleepovers every single weekend of the year practically, and we were wrestling. We were out throwing the football. We were knocking on people's doors at night and running. I mean,
Right.
so yeah, disconnection, and social media and Uber and Uber Eats it's all contributing to it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. It's really getting to a place where I'm scared for my future kids and what do they have. Like the world is just not set up for human interaction anymore. It seems like that's what I was telling you before with the podcast. Like Nick and I, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, and I'm making an excuse. Why we haven't been doing a lot of podcasts. It's that we can book these Zoom ones, and it's just like I don't want to see somebody over the computer. Like I like the in-person interaction, and that's something that's being lost. Like in business too, I'm sure you have it. I know Nick does in the real estate business. I do business with handyman contractors. We could do $100,000 before I've ever even met you in person, and it's not the way that it used to be. And I feel like that's a big problem. You agree, Nick?
Yeah, no, I agree. I have a private lender now, and I think he lent me a couple million before I even met him. And I only met him because he had a partner who wanted to lend money as well, and he just wanted to see what I was doing. So that was the only reason that I ever met him.
Wow.
And I think like there's so much to be done or said when you meet somebody in person. You feel a vibe, you feel like the aura around them. You get to, interact with them and without the internet cutting out or their camera not working or this. That to me is a lost art. Do you think that just one last question about your coaching? Do you think that you can do the same coaching on Zoom that you can do in person?
I do. Yeah.
You do.
Uh-huh.
And what's your reasoning behind that? Like you were saying before, like you go into a bedroom, you get into a deep state. Is that something that you're just like on an iPad next to this person who's laying in their bed? Is that what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, they don't need to lie. You don't need to lie down to do the work. I mean, most people are in a comfortable chair or something.
Okay.
So look, would it be better? It could be slightly better, but I'm able to see their reactions. I can hear their voice inflections. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, would I rather be in touch with someone like in the same room? Yeah, but it works. I mean, the results speak for themselves. Like I've had so many clients where their lives are just completely different, and it's all been over Zoom. So thank God for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's changed the way that we do business in general in all aspects of life: teaching, education, coaching, real estate. Law. Like there's public trials that happen on Zoom now. So I know I got to get used to it, but it's something that's something that's hard.
Yeah.
Something
So
hard.
I just want to ask a question in regards to the coaching business. When you first started that, was it difficult? Because I guess you weren't a coach before, and then you just want to do this because you have so much passion for it. How did that first session go with the first client? Was there a lot of things that you had to work through that made you better along the way as you got more clients?
So I think I spent an entire year just studying and reading like crazy because this is the first thing in my life that I can't get enough of. I literally could read psychology books sitting on a beach for 8 hours a day for a month and never get tired of it. So I worked really, really hard. And of course, like, am I as good, with the first person as I was on the 100th? No way. It wasn't that difficult though, because we talked about connection. Like I connect with people. I've always been told, and that's why I'm on the TV commercials. I'm very trusting. People have always open up. I mean, I've had so many people say I've never shared that with anyone in my life but you. So I make it really comfortable. People trust me. I have this great balance between being empathetic, but also saying the hard things, like, and being motivated, and being like believing in them. Like, dude, you can do this. I know you can. I believe in you. So I don't really remember if it was so difficult. I was just so excited to have my first client. And
Awesome.
she's actually gonna be probably one of my coaches, and she helps me with sales. So her life has changed so profoundly that she's like, I got to do this too.
Nice.
That's cool. That's a cool story, Brad. We appreciate you coming in person
Yeah, thank you.
and driving. I know it's a lot to come down the Beltway and traffic and all that stuff. So we appreciate that. And just one more time, are you on Instagram
I'm
and
on, I'm on every single social media platform on the planet, and
okay.
I put out a daily message on this stuff. So bradchandler.com/contact has all of my links to my social media.
Awesome. Awesome guys. We'll look out for Brad on the Everyday Millionaire Show. Make sure you like and subscribe and we'll see you next time.